Hello again, Steve here with a few comments about parenting. I'm going to echo what other people like Stefan Molyneux have been talking about for years, the importance of the whole approach to parenting. There's a lot of discussion that goes on now, the banter about freedom and how to create a greater amount of freedom in the world. And as much as we can complain about cops and all this sort of thing, that is sort of just trying to cover up the symptoms of what's going on. So it's a multi-generational thing to help people to approach life in a peaceful manner, that rather than having to use guns and rules and regulations that people haven't agreed to enforce things on them, it'll be more like a negotiation and an effort to try to understand people and to help them rather than pounce upon them to get them to do things. Now, I agree wholeheartedly that this begins with parenting, because what we are is an aggregate of what we were, right? And we all know it's fairly well documented now that the formative years, those first 5 years, whatever, are so key to developing what it is we turn out to be. So here are a couple of things that I'm going to comment on. I'll make a couple of comments on the traditional way that so many of us have approached parenting. The first one is that we have this idea that we got to make our kids into something, or that they inherently are something. For example, a child is born in a place we call Canada, so they're right away referred to as a Canadian child. That's one. The other one is traditionally religions. So a child that's born to a Muslim family is referred to as a Muslim child, or born to a Catholic family is called a Catholic child, and so on. I'm going to make the far out, might sound like an outrageous statement, but I hope to be able to explain this. I'm going to say that is the beginnings of child abuse. A lot of things stem from there, but I mean just the verbal child abuse, because of the ramifications that go on from there, the stories that are told, and so on. So now, to initiate this sort of, there's a ceremony that goes on to make sure that this is documented, so that we can show the child later or whatever, or we can act as though this paper says that my child is this or that. There is a paperwork filled out when a child is born, and that's sent in and comes back as some sort of a certificate that says this is a Canadian child, birth certificate. In days gone by, and still to some extent, that happens with religions. There's a birth ceremony where there's water thrown around and heads dipped in water and all this sort of thing, and then there's signatures and all sorts of rituals, and there's a certificate issued saying that now this is a Catholic or Protestant child or whatever. So that's kind of like a sort of like a branding onto the child. So now the child, and it's an amazingly difficult thing to shake that, extremely difficult. So my solution would be, don't involve ourselves in that sort of stuff. Don't bother getting a kid baptized. Let them make that decision if they want. Don't bother filling out documentation when a child is born. Let the child fill that out if they want. If you want to make a public record of it, have some friends come over, get them to take some pictures and some YouTube videos and so on of a newborn child, saying this child was born here and there and so on, and document it that way. That could be a public record, but at least that's something that the child does not have to shake later on. It's extremely difficult to shake these intrusive documents that are almost people are so deluded by the truth of them that it's difficult to shake them off if the child wants to. The next thing that's done to children is this continuation. So that's sort of like the seed that's planted, right? But there's the continuation of indoctrination that goes on in the citizenship, that sent to schools where they sing, patriotic songs initially, and worship flags, and put fake tattoos of flags on themselves at Canada Day, and it's all this whole holy ritual that is put upon children to worship something that is fiction. And the same goes for religion, same goes for family. So saying that the child, you are this family, and therefore this is the way you are, and this is the way you shall behave. I think there's a better way. Which is that for us as parents to be, rather than molders of like somebody who's on a wheel that makes a potter's wheel, trying to shape this entity into something that I want it to be, is to allow the child to be what it wants. Children are amazingly curious. So to do this, I would recommend, as I have done as best I can, homeschooling, because the public schooling today, where I live anyways, is schooling in name only. It's indoctrination. It's an indoctrination camp, just like any straight out of the Communist Manifesto, basically. I mean, there's very less and less learned all the time of any value. There's almost no critical thinking. I talk to kids who come out of high school or young and so on. They can't really think almost. There's ask them a question, it's hard to get an answer out of them. Compare that to my children who are largely homeschooled, and it's just, most people when they talk to them, they can't believe how somebody that young can actually talk like that, can actually have a reasoned conversation, argument, with huge amounts of substance to back up in argument, quotes and references to higher mathematics and so on. These are young teenagers who exhibit none of the issues of drugs and all kinds of running around and all that kind of thing. The best of friends. None of this stuff exists. Children are just put through a mill, a molding mill, and it's really a shame. It's amazing that they do as well as they do, actually. I went through it, for example, didn't learn how to read. I learned how to read as an adult, just a complete waste of time. But children have a natural curiosity. So a lot of people will say, there's this unbelievable trope that goes on. It seems like almost everybody I tell that I homeschool my kids, they're like, oh, that's not good for them, and it's just a bunch of bullshit, and based on nothing, based on stuff they've heard, gossip, or on the media or something like that. It's not based in anything. I've never heard a reasoned argument as to why not. The only evidence I've seen from my experience and the experience of other people that I've met is that the children are more balanced, more socially balanced, better off, fewer divorces and all that sort of thing going forward. But the other thing is, well, kids won't do anything because I think that's why they won't do their work. If they don't have an authoritarian teacher get them to do it, and I think that's probably because of a parenting style. It's a reflection of a parenting style. Most parents, so many parents that I see, even if it's most well intended, and it usually is well intended. I'm not saying that the intention is wrong. Are authoritarian to a certain extent, and they're telling their kids what to do. They're constantly telling their kids what to do, to the point where the kids have almost, they lose their sort of self-defense mechanism. They lose their creativity almost. I see them in the shopping mall all the time. The kids constantly asking, Mom, can I do this? Mom, can I do this? Mom, can I do this? And it's like, no, maybe later, etc. Everything's micromanaged. It's so micromanaged. More so all the time. But if we let go of that and allow the kids' natural curiosity, for example, what I used to notice when my daughter was very young, I would read to her once in a while. And when I would read to her, she wanted to read. It's like she wants to get her head between my head and the page and find out how I'm doing that. The curiosity is so intense. So we could spend a half an hour on a word. Didn't get through the bottom of the page. And it was something like, Yertle the Turtle or something. It was something really simple. But she wanted to figure out those words. How was it that I was seeing that? Because she got to the point where she realized it wasn't just the picture, that I would put my finger underneath it. She couldn't figure out why, but the curiosity was there so intensely. So that's a good exercise for us. When we see the curiosity, it takes time. It takes almost like a love. It takes coming out of ourselves and living for them for a moment, right? But if we, help the child to do what it wants to do, that's very different than saying you are a Canadian and this is your duties. That's dictatorial, right? As opposed to a servant mindset. And of course, then being a good role model is extremely important. So, because children are like sponges, they suck up. They don't suck up so much what we say, but what we do, right? Or both, but they see, they're very visceral. They see what's going on. They feel what's going on. And so the best role model they can be, and I haven't been a great role model, but I've had my moments, right? And the results are astounding. Absolutely astounding. I could never have guessed. My kids now are in their late teens. I could never have guessed it, but I gotta say it, my best friends, well, aside from my wife, I would say, are my kids. I mean, I almost can't relate to most people in terms of what they talk about their teenagers, about how you can't trust kids and they're this and they're that. I don't know, I just have an amazing relationship. It's completely open. We talk about anything. There's no taboos. And, our greatest moments are sitting down, all three of us, my daughter, my son, myself, for hours in the evening having philosophical discussions about geopolitics and gender issues and religion, um, discovery, uh, germ theory, wave theory, I don't know, like whatever comes up. They just continue to educate me with just this amazing wealth of the results of their curiosity. And now it's learning social skills with going to work and using the work as a stepping stone for self-betterment. And it's just absolutely astounding to watch it when you set the seeds of it's okay to be curious. In fact, it's natural to be curious, and I want to help you be curious. This is, I think, certainly a way to the future of betterment, because our children never learned that authority is authority just because it says so. There's always a reasoned answer when it was that we had to get something done. It was reasoned out and it made sense to them. And I found that kids at a very young age, 2 years old maybe, are extremely rational, extremely logical. And it just takes a little bit of time. It's easy to say no, go to bed. But that's not an argument. When the question why comes out, if we can take the time to answer why honestly, don't try to hold back. Sometimes we have to, water it down for kids. But water it down in an honest way. That's just my point. And another result is that they end up more intelligent than their parents. I mean, my kids are just blow me away with their wealth of information and ability to reason. It's just absolutely astounding. And this makes sense, right? I mean, it's not like I'm building a computer. Like, a computer is never going to be, I'm always dominion over it. I don't have dominion over my kids. My kids are not mine as in my possession. I'm only a custodian. I have like a fiduciary duty towards them. That's all. But if I do my best to impart upon them what I can and encourage them to go where they want to go, they're going to they end up smarter than me in so many ways. That's brilliant. And finally, I would have to say is raising kids in somewhat a manner like this is a way to create a positive posterity for humanity. Because when we raise our children peacefully, they're almost certainly never going to be government operatives. And they're going to operate in a way that is along the lines of negotiation rather than dictatorial, which I think we can use a lot more of in our world. Hope this was helpful. I think that it's a very important topic. It's not a quick fix. Raising children, in my experience, has been the most difficult job I've ever done. But rewarding, it's hard to put any expression of comparison of any other thing in life that I've ever experienced in terms of a reward to see the flourishing of human potential. It's just astounding to me. I don't know what else I can say, but maybe I'll share more later. They don't really like me to say too much about them, so naturally they're developing their own independence, and they're not, I don't want to be patronizing or anything like this. Been accused of that before, but it's called being a proud dad, I guess, in a way. But I wanted to share that a little bit anyways, because I just think it's so important how we parent our kids, and just be cautious that we don't try to make them into something, but help them to be what they want to be. Hope this is helpful. Steve here again. Great chatting. Talk again soon. Bye.